got the what?
25 slide PowerPoint for the handbook
That's my
presentation.
Oh,
PowerPoint.
no, please not again.
Just wake me up when you're done.
Yeah.
Like grandma's training modules.
Yeah, I got a book recently that said boring meetings. So, and
I want to gap me down.
PowerPoint was one.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the July 18th. It's July already. July 18th special session for the Salisbury City Council. We have just a couple of items on the agenda, and we don't have any guests in here, so I'll just mention, please turn your cell phones off and use the stairs if there's an emergency and not the elevators. Thank you. The agenda has been distributed. I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. And I just put that in the wrong place. Can we get the same motions and seconds for the first item? The first item, I'll accept the motion to entertain ordinance number 2394 for second reading.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Mr. Tillman, please.
Excuse me. This is an ordinance of the an ordinance of the Council of the City of Salisbury to authorize and empower the City of Salisbury to issue and sell from time to time upon its full faith and credit general obligation bonds in one or more series in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $4,751,500. The proceeds of the sale thereof to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing, reimbursing, or refinancing costs as defined herein, which include issuance, costs, and capitalized interest of the public purpose projects identified herein as the Spine Rail Trail, Community Centers, Riverside Circle, Service Center Facilities, Plan Phase 1, E7 Inspector's Truck, S14-201 F-150 Dump Truck, S32 Hot Patch Trailer Improvements, replacement of the 1998 roller, Lemon Hill Standpipe, Fitzwater Street Lift Station Phase 2, Belt Filter Press Rehabilitation Dump Truck, Wastewater Treatment Plant, Parking Garage Facade and Landscaping, and Aquatic Weed Harvester with Unloader Conveyor, specifying the maximum principal amount of the bonds or bond anticipation notes provided for herein to be allocated to each such project, subject to the reallocation by the city in accordance with the applicable budgetary procedures or law, providing for the council by resolution to determine, approve, or provide for various matters related to the authorization, sale, security, issuance, delivery, payment, redemption of, and for each series of the bonds, authorizing and empowering the council to provide by resolution for the issuance and sale from time to time of one or more series of general obligation bond anticipation notes in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $4,751,500 prior to and in anticipation of the issuance of any of the bonds authorized hereby in order to finance or reimburse project costs on an interim basis, authorizing and empowering the council to provide by resolution for the issuance and sale from time to time of one or more series of general obligation bonds in order to refund any of the bonds issued pursuant to the authority of this ordinance, including paying issuance costs and interest on each such refunding bonds, provided that the aggregate principal amount of any such series of refunding bonds shall not exceed 130% of the aggregate principal amount of the bonds refunded therefrom, providing for the levy and collection of ad valorem taxes sufficient for and pledging the full faith and credit and unlimited taxing power of the city to the prompt payment of the principal of and interest on each series of the bonds, the bond anticipation notes, and the refunding bonds authorized hereby, collectively the obligations, providing that the principal of and interest on each series of the obligations also may be paid from any other sources of revenue lawfully available to the city for such purpose, providing that certain actions may be taken or provided by resolution in that any of the obligations authorized hereby may be consolidated with any bonds, bond anticipation notes, and or refunding bonds authorized by the council and issued as a single series of bonds, bond anticipation notes, and or refunding bonds, authorizing and directing officials and employees of the city to take certain actions in connection with the obligations, providing that this title shall be deemed a statement of the substance of this ordinance for all purposes and otherwise generally relating to the issuance, sale, delivery, and payment of the obligations.
Thank you.
And the specifics appear on page 5 with regard to each project and the amount allocated.
Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the approval of ordinance number 2394 for second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. And next we have, I'll entertain a motion for resolution number 2645. Are you going to do that one as well, Mr. Tillman?
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay, hold on. I
oh.
need to get the motion first. I just wasn't sure who was presenting.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Resolution 2645, just the first thing that hits you when you look at this that's different from the ordinance is the amount of money involved. This actually has a cap in there of $30,025,000, and in my communications with the bond counsel, basically the reason that that number is in there is because based on the recommendations of the consultant, there may be refinancing of existing bond obligations, and this amount is a maximum that you might go up to if you find the need to do that. There's also some other caps in there that might actually be below this amount. You can't exceed by 130%, for example, the one we just read. So that limitation would be there, as well as the limitation that's imposed on city borrowing, the overall limitation. And I'm not really sure what that amount is at this point. We'd have to ask Keith, but that issue came up.
And we will. Yeah, is that, this is the first I remember. Are we going to refinance?
I'll leave that to
Yeah,
Mr. Cordry. I think that there's some in the works.
I think there were some substantial savings this month.
Well, this is,
Mr.
I mean,
Cordry,
this is
would you
new,
mind?
right? This
Yeah.
hasn't been on
Well,
a council
It's
work
not been on
session.
we discussed it in the budget session, and there was a presentation about some of the potential savings over the course of time that we could by going this route.
Do you want me to step aside and let him answer any questions, or do you want me to go ahead with this?
Well, if there are more questions.
Well, maybe
Or-
after you read it,
Just
maybe
refresher.
for the benefit of the public, maybe
Yes.
he could explain what this does and how it strengthens our financial position as a city.
All right. This is a resolution of the city authorizing the issuance and sale of a series of its general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $30,025,000 pursuant to the authority of sections 19-301 to 19-309, inclusive of the local government article of the annotated code of Maryland, section 19-207 of the local government article of the annotated code of Maryland, sections SC 7-45 and SC 7-46 of the charter of the city of Salisbury, and certain ordinances and a resolution identified herein. Such bonds to be designated as provided herein, the proceeds of the sale thereof to be used and applied for the public purpose of financing or reimbursing costs in certain projects identified herein as the new money projects. And 2, currently refunded in whole or in part the outstanding amounts of certain city bonds identified herein as the 2007 bond, the 2008 bond, the 2009 bond, the 2011 B bond, 2012 bond, the 2013 bond, the 2014 A bond, and the 2014 B bond, and paying relating costs, prescribing the form and tenor of the bonds and the terms, conditions, and details for the issuance and sale thereof at public sale by solicitation of competitive bids, authorizing certain city officials to determine certain matters provided for herein in connection with the sale of the bonds, and ratifying, confirming, and approving certain actions already taken on behalf of the city with respect to the bonds, authorizing and approving preparation and distribution of a preliminary and final official statement and any amendments or supplements thereto in connection with the sale of the bonds, providing for the selection of a bond registrar and paying agent for the bonds, and to the extent necessary or desirable, an escrow deposit agent, verification consultant, and/or bidding agent, and providing for certain determinations in accordance with any such engagement. Authorizing the preparation, execution, and delivery of continuing disclosure undertaking pursuant to section rule, or SEC rule, 15C2-12, and covenanting to provide continuing disclosure relating to the bonds, providing for the distribution and investment of the proceeds of the bonds, providing for the levy and collection of any taxes necessary for the prompt payment of the maturing principal of and interest on the bonds, providing that the full faith and credit and unlimited taxing power of the city shall be irrevocably pledged to the payment of such principal and interest, providing that the principal of and interest on the bonds also may be paid from any other sources of revenue lawfully available to the city for such purpose, making certain covenants and determinations relating to the tax-exempt status of the bonds, providing that the provisions of this resolution shall be liberally construed and generally relating to the issuance, sale, delivery, and payment of and for the bonds authorized hereby. That's it.
Thank you for joining us, Mayor. I believe Mr. Ireton had some questions that Mr. Cordry might be able to remind us of our discussions. Maybe that will answer.
I can just give a brief overview. In the spring, we had a financial consultant review our bond portfolio. They determined we had an opportunity to refinance, and the best course was a public sale. At that time, they assumed approximately 1.719 as a rate would yield approximately 1.3 million gross savings in debt service over the life. It assumed no extension of any term. So no debt was extended whatsoever. So this assumes a public sale. So we visited New York, our team recently, the mayor and assistant administrator and myself and Dave Ryan, and we made a presentation before S&P and Moody's and got a rating. And we're scheduled to go before the market on Thursday. We're going to accomplish the sale, and then the following Thursday, we expect to close.
So just pray that Estonia doesn't leave the EU in that time, or Latvia doesn't leave NATO, or something like that.
Nobody rocks the cradle.
Yeah, while we were in New York, due to the Brexit, the gross savings actually climbed from 1.3 to 1.5 million.
So never mind, pray that they leave.
But
Just hope that it works for us,
Yeah.
whichever way that goes. Okay. Mr. Ireton, did you have
No,
additional
thank
questions?
you.
Okay,
thanks.
thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other discussion, questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adoption of resolution number 2645, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you very much. There being no other business, I will close the special session. Thank you. And then we will start our work session as soon as I get to the right packet. There we go.
Thank you, Keith.
All right, thank you very much. All right. First item on the work session agenda are the handbook changes. Ms. Lloyd.
Do you want to call Mr. Heath too?
Oh, yes. Yes, we should do that, shouldn't we?
I'm gonna actually present. Do you want me to at the
Okay.
podium, or am I okay here?
Oop, I didn't do that in the right order.
The work session is probably fine there,
Okay, thank you. I'm comfy.
in my opinion.
No one? I don't have the dollar.
No, just
Okay.
outgoing and then 9.
Just like it says, right?
Like in a hotel.
Oh, I didn't have a line, that's what it was. Don't go away, I don't have it on speaker yet. Speaker. Hang on.
Yeah, what? Are you cold?
No, I can get colder. I'm fine.
I am.
I'm even fine.
You got a blankie there, so you
It's not working.
Yeah,
I'll let you
come
try.
Yeah,
I-
I'm still hot. I'm
It
still
didn't
hot.
bother at
Yeah,
all.
across the 10
I
minutes.
think that's
Yeah.
good.
You'll hear this.
That's what
And me either.
You know who I was with, right?
It's not too bad unless you come over here and then go back, and your office is especially hot.
Sundays.
I could have
I could eat
interpreted
fast
that,
enough.
as you know in the job, I could have interpreted that 6 different ways.
Glad it's not
Basically,
just me.
anything, what reason did they give you for why it's not worth
I'm
it?
going right over there and getting me one.
Back to remember some summer being up here and having the 3 to 5.
They're good.
around because
And
it's
then, and you know what?
it's always the
This
same
week
thing.
in 2 months was the first time I could get one.
Yeah,
They sell
this
out
is
so
the
fast.
third day,
We
third
we
year in a row
probably
that it's
need to
not the
do
hottest
something
day.
like that.
Hello there, how are you?
Come up with
That's awesome. Yeah.
That was only,
Well, at least it
It's
wasn't
nice
as
in
bad
here.
as it was the first 2 summers I was here. No air. It was registering 81
Mr. Heath?
degrees in my office, and I'm
All right, great.
Hey.
We can hear you too. Okay. All right, should I maybe put a speaker here for microphone?
You want another here?
Okay. Welcome, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That a joke or what?
We're just discussing how it's not going to be the hottest day of the year for dogs on Thursday.
Wednesday.
Oh, no, Thursday. Wednesday, it is Wednesday, sorry. Anyway,
Took the
let's
wrong
stick
day.
to
oh,
the,
it's all,
let's stick to the script, maybe I'll do better.
that,
All right, first up is the handbook change. You said you were gonna.
I'll present.
Tom?
yes.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
All right, thank you. The ordinance that the council is considering this afternoon is related to Chapter 2.24, or more specifically, the rules and regulations for personnel. The proposed ordinance will have the effect of allowing the mayor, along with the Director of Human Resources, to make changes to that section of the employee code without having to bring everything back to the city council for approval. To date, the handbook was last revised in 2010. To date, some changes have already been made internally simply out of necessity, changes with insurance coverage or our participation with the blood bank, what have you. But it's important for the council to understand that even if the council does away with its obligation to approve every change to the employee handbook, you'll still have an opportunity to weigh in before those changes take effect. So 10 days out from the 40-day approval date, council would have an opportunity to decide whether or not they had any concern or issue with the proposed change. The changes are on the ordinance. They're simple. Starting on line 29, section 2.24.020 personnel rules. Read previously, after hearing on the rules, the city council may approve such rules as proposed or modify, reject, or return them for revision or resubmission. The change is that the mayor shall prepare personnel rules and carry out the provision of the chapter. That's there. Such rules shall become effective 40 days after they are signed by the mayor and published to the city council, unless the city council rejects any such rules by resolution at least 10 days prior to the effective date. Affected employees will be notified of any change in the personnel rules prior to the date. And the mayor, in A, line 37, the mayor will recommend changes to the pay plan for all positions to the city council during the budget process. And that's changes the previous language. The pay plan for each position within each department is subject to revision yearly prior to the beginning of the fiscal year. So in summary, the mayor would have the authority to change personnel rules, make those changes, and then notify the council of the change. You'd have an opportunity to weigh in if you didn't care for the change. It's pretty straightforward.
So it changes it from a pre-approval to a presumptive approval.
Yes.
Unless action is taken.
Yes.
But it still leaves the council with authority to approve or weigh in on changes.
That's correct.
Is this Department of Redundancy Department? Because that's what this seems like. I've never heard the language and published to the city council before, ever. If there's going to be changes, and then they're going to come to you so that you can look at them and change them if you want to, why didn't we just sit at the table 40 days previously and do it together like we're supposed to do it now? That's why I said, is this Department of Redundancy
Yeah.
Department?
Well, I think right now, they can't make any changes until it goes through us and gets through work session and goes on the calendar and
That's
gets
good.
through the process.
Yeah, I like that.
This would allow them to be more responsive. We would still be told about them. If there was disagreement with what was being done, we have the opportunity to do a resolution to not do it. But I mean.
So wouldn't it 40 days beforehand coming in and saying, this is the changes that we're looking at, let's all do this together, instead of, I'm gonna make these changes and then 40 days, I hope
Yeah.
you all
I'm
can,
guessing, I'm
40
guessing
days after
with
they're
the
signed.
dynamic that we have at this point, that's what would happen, that we would likely see them or know about them
Yeah.
in advance. But if there was some strong disagreement and the administration wanted to put it through and the council didn't, then we'd have an opportunity to act. But Mayor,
Is,
I think has something to say.
I don't remember this ever showing up in,
As an issue?
as a agenda on, in the public, in the, all the goal-setting sessions, all of those issues. And I say it like this, it's not gonna sound how I want it to sound, but until those things that are on that list, come up, I think this is an example of checks and balances. There are lots of things in that handbook that have to do with department heads, where the council is required to do things. Very little in the way of the day-to-day operation of the city. Are we involved in? I had always wondered when I was mayor, how did all these rules and regulations get written? And they were written by previous city councils along with previous mayors. So I just think it's Department of Redundancy Department, and if you're gonna do it and then give it to us 40 days later to see if we like it, why not, why don't we all just sit at the table at the beginning of the 40 days, and if there's no big deal, approve the change.
I agree.
But it doesn't seem to me it changes anything, except, I don't know
What we
whether or
do.
not one person should be writing a handbook for over 400 employees. And, well, yeah, if there's a work group actively identifying other, and I know some of it's just crap adjustments, I know that. Some of it's just a period here, a comma there. Some of it is putting in a monetary amount, and I know it shouldn't take that long. But if there's changes, I mean, certainly we have enough room on our work session agendas. If there's changes to the handbook, there's plenty of time to take them up. So, just my thoughts. After, just after seeing it the first time, not knowing that any of this was going on.
So happy to weigh in, and then Jeannie should probably weigh in. There's a reason why it's been 6.5 years since anybody sent these. The changes take place, and we just operate without changing, and that's not necessarily the best answer. But that's largely what happens is, we just change operations to do what we need to do, or that's been my observation. And that there are a lot of things in that handbook that aren't even followed, the way that they were intended, because times have changed, rules have changed, and insurers have changed, and all sorts of things have changed. But it is a very cumbersome and expensive process, to write legislation for every single change, and that's how we'd have to do it. And we can do it, but it's also not necessarily. And actually, I think probably the best point that you made, Jim, is that there's a checks and balances, because there are certainly ways that a chief executive could seek to take advantage of employees or abuse employees, and could use the ability to change the personnel policies as a way to get there. But I mean, there's a lot of other laws that kind of dictate what's possible and what's not. But I think that the biggest thing for me is that we've got a long list of things that we've gone out to the employees, a long list of things that they would like us to improve and change in that handbook, a long list of things that I'd like to see improved and changed. From a management standpoint, as frequently as you can make policy changes not a legislative process, you want to. There should be policy documents that are not legislative, and the backstop is the code. The backstop's the code. But, and you don't codify all of your personnel policies, or, a lot of other policies. But that being said, this is not a passion of mine or the public's, because it's not, and this is not something you'll ever see come up in a public goal setting session. This is about management. And that's one of the things that I'm responsible for, is managing the organization. So, it's not a passion thing. This is a procedural conversation, but I don't know, Jeannie, you could probably do a better job than I can of speaking to the
If we look at
importance.
letter B, the procedure for discipline, grievance, and appeal shall be set forth in the employee handbook as adopted by the mayor. I just, if there's a change,
Does the code speak to that at all? No.
the hours of work, the attendance, I mean, I sort of got the impression when we started this, it was about the changing in health insurance, but B, C,
No, there's,
and B and C, I mean, those are
Dozens.
Big
big.
things, yeah.
Those are big things.
And I think that you're right, you probably wouldn't hear this come forward in the public unless and until the way we're operating conflicts with what's in the actual
Yeah.
adopted policy, and we have a
Did
legal
any,
issue.
I wasn't here for the employee presentations during the budget. Did any of them bring employee handbook issues in front of the council that day? That they were
There
here?
were things that are contained within the
Yeah,
employee
I mean,
handbook,
there
work
are-
hours,
yeah.
there were compensation,
Is it the 35 to 40 people?
it was
Some of
35 to
that.
40, there were issues for
Oops.
you had to start that.
additional pay for additional training,
Training.
that kind of thing. There were concerns about post-retirement employment benefits contributions. So, yeah, there were some things that the personnel committees brought forward that are contained within this.
Right.
And then we had didn't we have new positions? With some of the supervisors, wasn't some things changed there?
That doesn't have to do with the personnel
Re-
handbook, though.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, things like the assistant city administrator not being in the code, I mean, those are big ones. I mean, I know there's minutia ones that I'm sure Jeannie could go into, subsection D/R /L through T, line 40. But I mean, stuff like that is, you know, that's just one of the big ones that I can think of that should be in there somehow.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
If I could, one of the things, one of our main goals and objectives is to have governance over the fiduciary responsibility of the administration. And we always have that control, and anything that's changed relative to the budget would have to be within the confines of the budget that was approved. So I think that some of the concerns about doing things that will financially affect the city are covered because of the fact that that's covered under the budget process.
Yeah, I agree with that comment, but I heard concerns as well about actions that would affect the employees, not necessarily the financial position of the city. But for instance, if a future mayor decided that he wanted every employee to work 40 hours and wasn't going to make any pay changes or whatever, certainly there are external laws that would govern if he said he wanted everybody to work 60 hours for the same pay. But to put everybody at 40 and not make compensations, it wouldn't change, wouldn't have a budgetary change. So it wouldn't fall under that fiduciary responsibility and impact the budget. But it would certainly impact the employees. So that's just one example that comes to mind based on things that we heard from the employees.
I don't know, maybe Jeannie, Mr. Council President, maybe Mrs. Lloyd can give us some examples that will be so ridiculously minute that we may think, well, really, we don't need to know about that.
I think
I'm just
what-
looking, I'm just trying to find,
What is it?
yeah, A, B,
Yeah.
and C, because I'm not comfortable with B and C. And A is, you know, that's, but if there are examples that we could hear, that'd be great. I'd like to hear
I think the blood
examples.
bank's probably one of those
Yeah.
kind of things.
The blood
Okay.
bank is one of those things. We no longer have a membership fee that we pay at all, so that completely goes out. Many years ago, I believe in 2011 or 2010, prior to me arriving, the percentage of what the city pays for health insurance and the employee pays for was already changed. We pay 90%, they pay 10%. That never got changed in the employee handbook on the 2010 revision. And it's just sitting there, and it's incorrect. It says we pay 100%.
If it's sitting there and it's incorrect, how come How come I didn't bring it here and ask for him to change it in the handbook?
We just put
I mean, if it's wrong,
we just put a group together to review, well, I should say Jeannie did, to review the employee handbook, and as we started going through and
it's kind of like the
identifying
charter.
places, exactly, where.
Little places here
Nice-
and there.
Nice one. Nicely
Right.
done.
Sort of like reviewing the code, only smaller
Yeah,
scale.
that's exactly right.
So we've been working on that, and then we realized that we had some places that needed to be updated, and they seem to be very straightforward, and the idea here was to not to have bring everything to the council, and ultimately you get an opportunity to stop any change that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
So
But we
the
haven't
oversight
brought
still-
anything to the council, so I haven't been made to feel uncomfortable yet with what you're bringing to the council,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure whether or not
I-
the change is necessary.
Well, I think the majority of the things that we've identified have already come to the council in some other form.
Okay.
But the policy
The
itself.
prices of the insurance. But then that section in the personnel policy manual wasn't brought forward to the council to get a resolution to change it in the employee handbook. So it stands incorrect in
Right.
the employee handbook.
I
That's just
understand
one
that.
thing.
Well, go ahead and give us the examples you were going to talk about.
Every year, the mayor brings forward to the city council a recommended pay plan. And it can have a variety of things in it. It could have reclassifications, it could have requests for a certain amount of money just that one year, or it can incorporate many things. So we want to be able to fix the employee handbook so that it accurately reflects what the proposed pay plan was. And we'd have to come forward to get the actual verbiage changed.
Well, couldn't we just put language in the policy that it's the pay plan as adopted in the current year budget? Then the policy never has to change. It goes by what's in the budget for that year. Otherwise, you are right, every year that would have to come back, and it still would. We'd still have to go through that exercise of sending it to the council and then waiting 40 days to see whether there were going to be objections and doing all that. It seems to me that those kinds of things can be corrected with language that ties them to the budget that we already adopt annually.
But the budget doesn't have every single solitary process in it. It has an overall,
It has everything the bond council.
But for the pay scale, yeah. But I mean, as
Just
far
that
as
$5
reference to
agreement.
the actual pay scale changes and the dollar amounts that go with that. I think one thing that's missing is, it occurs to me, I mean, I have gotten copies of the personnel manual in the past, but I'm not sure that at least two of the other council members have ever seen it, and it's been a long time since I've seen it. And I think having this discussion without the benefit of seeing that and seeing what kinds of things are in the personnel manual, makes it a little bit more challenging to imagine what might come out of it or what might go sideways by changing that. So, I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like right now we're looking at a lot of minor changes and thinking
But you're
it's
thinking
bigger
of major.
deal to put it before the council every time we have to make one of these minor changes. But to change what we're doing opens up the door for bigger changes, and there will be times where there are bigger changes. And I think that we need to each review the policy ourselves and formulate our questions or our thoughts about what that may or may not be. And
I would support that.
what could or couldn't be done through that policy.
I mean, you know, as a mayor for 6 years, I can tell you, nobody ever wants to have to come to the council and do just periods and all of that stuff. But as the past city administrator, Mr. Pick, always asked me to take myself out of, and it is this office and those offices, not necessarily you and them. It is,
And
that's
that's it though. That's the point, because if you read our charter, I mean, the responsibility for all decision making when it comes to, except for department heads, when it comes to all grievances, all processes, everything is embodied in that office with respect to the management of the people. And yet, the personnel policies, you're asked to defend policies that you have no control over shaping, and you can't change or be nimble enough to improve. It's like, why isn't this like that? That's the question that you probably got every day, and that I have gotten every day. And it's like, well, I don't know. We haven't changed the personnel policies in 6.5 years, and it would take an act of Congress to do so. Perhaps it's really about dividing. Maybe it's ultimately, and I think this idea of reviewing the document and seeing, what is really embodied in this document, personnel policies, maybe that's a really useful process. But I think maybe it's about kind of figuring out what is there that has a connection or a linkage to our charter, our budget, our laws, and what doesn't. And maybe it's two different documents.
Yeah.
That one that's more easy to update and change, and one that's, like police directives, for example. That's not something that we deal with either.
Correct me, I think that we took out the part of the employee handbook that related to council. There was a section in there that talked about council travel and some other things. Did we remove that to a separate, if this hasn't been changed since 2010, then that didn't happen. So to do this today, as it's proposed, would leave it to the mayor to also set rules for us.
Well, those
in
shouldn't
theory.
be in the personnel
They're
policy.
not in
Exactly,
there.
exactly. But I'm saying,
They're not in
as
there.
it is right now, there was something in there.
Is
Were
there
they?
concern about
I don't
the
remember.
breadth and depth of the changes that you want to do? Is this something that can go on a consent agenda? We can read them, and I'm not going to argue with, there have been
Maybe so.
people who've sat behind here and argued about a semicolon for months. I'm not, don't want to do that. Is it something that if there are changes that are coming, without any changes having come before us,
Right.
I'm not sure.
Could we do it in one resolution that could then be edited,
Yeah.
That way it's only one piece of legislation, with lots of edits and changes versus a resolution for every single edit.
I think it's just a red line copy of the policy, along with the current policy, along with an updated policy and a resolution to adopt it as presented.
And maybe that's even an annual
I was
process.
gonna say,
Exactly,
sometimes at
right
the end
along
of the
with the
budget,
budget.
we have to pass certain ordinances or resolutions, I don't know which one, that go along with the stuff that's inside the budget.
Right.
If you're gonna, if we say in here that, I think it's letter B, changes pay, then let's just put it all there at the beginning of the year, have human resources get it all ready for us, put it down at the table at budget time, it's.
And they take effect July 1, based on
Just-
anything
yeah,
that's come out
I
of
mean,
that
in
process.
that way, it's still, we can still maintain the balance of power, and we still have some input.
And there's a backstop for,
There's a trigger to make it
just in
happen.
case, I wanted to take advantage of employees, there would be
I
some
would
way
say
to ensure.
if a future mayor.
Future
All
mayor,
right,
not
but
even
just-
Future mayor would
Some bad mayor comes
Yeah.
along.
I'm saying, just in case,
Yeah, it's.
Or has been here
Right, most
before.
of what we've identified have been things that have already had either a resolution of the action itself, and it never got put into the employee handbook. And there were many things that actually were changed quite some time ago.
Yeah.
So,
I think we need a comprehensive update now of what those changes are, and do a single resolution to adopt that. And then, as the mayor said, make that an annual process, tag it to the budget process and the fiscal year beginning, which is when most of those kinds of things would change. And in my opinion, continue the way it's going.
So for right now, can we just withdraw the ordinance and take it back and draft a resolution with the red line changes and bring that? It may take a little while, but bring that back to
Yeah.
council.
I think that's fine with me. Mr. Heath?
Fine with me.
Here?
All righty.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, we have
So we'll
consensus to
So
proceed.
when you start the budget process on August 30th, put this on your sheet of paper.
30th, July?
No.
It's already here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's
Ms.
good.
Lloyd.
Thank you. Fun.
All right, next up, I see Mr. Mold's in the audience. He's going to join us to talk about a budget amendment for the WCBOE traffic signal repairs. I think this is another one of those insurance, somebody broke it, somebody paid us back for it, and we have to
Yeah,
move it.
exactly.
Okay.
When they were doing
All in
Parkside,
favor?
the paving contract hit the detectors, which are embedded in the pavement, and we had an available camera to switch it over to video detection. So we were able to make the repair right away and do that. So that basically we spent some money. We just like to recover our costs of using our video camera. And the amount there is $5,139.
Okay.
So get it back into the account.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay?
That one's done.
Yep.
Ah, the unmarked, unnamed alley is next, isn't it?
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Next we have, yes, the Lot 11 alley abandonment, again with Mr. Molds.
Yes, with the agreement with selling the lot, there's an alley in the middle of it that basically when you kind of drive into your parking spaces, you're kind of following that alley. So in order to transfer the property, we first need to abandon a portion of that alley. Then the alley would revert to the parcels that the city owns on either side. And then I think with the sale, they'll combine all those parcels together with the sale for the development of it. So we put together an ordinance, could not find a name of it, so we just call it an unnamed alley. And we are abandoning the part after, well, you see in your exhibit, once we get past the Cannon Building, it's that remainder of that parcel. So this will steal, the Cannon Building here, this is on that one, yeah. So this is the part that'll be abandoned and will revert to these two parcels and then become part of it, and then it's part of the sale. So we had to go back to 1920 to find the plat for that.
And the 20-foot unnamed alley and the area to remain open, that's gonna stay the same?
The portion that is called to remain open will be stay as an alley. And that was to provide access to the rear of the library and the rear of the Cannon Building for deliveries and whatnot.
Can we name them?
Yeah, I'll take offers.
I know they're looking for something for Donnie Drewer, maybe we can make it Drewer Lane or something.
Stevenson.
Drewer Drive, yes, there you go. Okay, Mr. Heath, do you have any comments on this?
No.
Anyone else? We have consensus to move that forward?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is the Wycomico Presbyterian text amendment from Mr. Lennox. Well, no, you are not Mr. Lennox. Substituted by. Welcome.
Well, we hope we have a simple request for you. Wycomico Presbyterian Church now owns what was the social hall building at Allen Memorial. And of course, it is separated from the church sanctuary, and they need to provide identification for people coming from out of town, wedding receptions, whatever, to be able to identify what building they're actually going to. The office service residential district is restrictive for signage, allowing only 4 square feet for wall signage. There are 4 office service residential districts in the city, but only one has the churches, and there are 4 churches and church buildings in this district across Route 50. We don't want to create an opportunity for excessive signage, but we don't think any consideration was given back in 1983 for large structures such as these 4 churches and what their future might be and what their future needs of signage might be. So, as I said, Allen Memorial's buildings got split up when they moved out and built the new church out on Snow Hill Road. I believe it's the Korean church has their sanctuary building, and Wycomico Presbyterian now owns their social hall building. The Planning Commission modified slightly the staff recommendation where they made it equate so much square footage per linear square footage of building up to a maximum of 30 square feet.
So there's a relationship between the building size and the sign size.
Right, they tried to make it a relationship between the building size and the amount of signage they could put up. Trinity Memorial, you probably all know, has some larger signs over there, but we believe that they're legal non-conforming signs. They've been there for years.
Any questions?
So the sign's gonna go on the building.
Yes.
It can be illuminated?
I don't believe-
Indirectly or directly, or non-illuminated or indirectly illuminated?
That's what we put into the language because we don't know what the future might hold for somebody else to request, like uplighting from the ground or gooseneck lighting, something like that.
The original application is that if people are coming into town and they need to get to the social building,
Yes.
they don't know to turn, they need to know where to turn.
They need to identify which building
building.
after they
When they
turn
get to the
because
building.
they've been given permission by the Historic Commission, I believe it is, to put a small sign at the driveway at Broad Street. But once they get up to the building, they may not know which building they're going to without some kind of identification on that building.
There's a picture in the packet of what they're
Are we
proposing.
going down?
Yeah, go down a
further?
couple of pages and you'll see a picture of the proposal. It's basically lettering on the building.
And in this case, it's fairly conservative lettering, but it goes up on their elevator tower. Well, part of it's on the elevator tower and part of it's down lower.
But you've got to get onto, which street is that, to get to that building?
You've got to turn
Turn
into a
off.
driveway off of Broad Street. I think if you go down to,
A little bit further. I think there's-
if you have attachment number 3 in your materials,
There for myself, how many?
there's a picture that they provided for us that was taken, I believe, in front of Wycomico, looking across the grass and across the driveway to the building.
So the sign's gonna go
Next one's
on
an aerial,
the
it's helpful.
building, I'm on
Attachment,
attachment number 4.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
gonna have to go like this.
yeah.
I'm on attachment number 4. The sign's gonna go at the end of the subject building.
Yes. So it will be on the opposite end of the building from North
Oh, well,
Division
we're
Street.
slapping on the side of his, you know, reception this way. I mean, I'm just wondering if you can find the alley. I mean, look at that alley.
Yeah, but when you get in that alley, I mean,
I mean, it's
she said,
dark. I'll
yeah,
give
she
it
said they
that.
put a sign, they've had permission to put a sign there, like temporary wayfinding signs when they have an event, I guess.
But that alley
But then when you
serves,
get in there, where do you go? So this will have
So
labeling
it'll
on the
be
back of the building.
illuminated at the end of the subject building? Is that
yes,
where-
yes.
Nope,
And
that's
the
fine.
alley serves both that building and the building that's labeled as Korean Church. So
Right.
that's why Wycomico is afraid that once people start up the driveway, they still don't know which building they're going to with no identification on the back side of it.
Yeah.
And Mr. White is here. He submitted the application on behalf of the church. So if you have any questions that he can help you with, we can ask him to join us up here.
I have no problem.
Mr. Bowden? You okay with this? Mr. Heath?
I'm fine.
Ms. Jackson?
I'm fine with it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
So you can move that forward as well.
Kim or Mr. Tillman will let me know when to advertise it.
Yes, if you maybe just work with Kim and make sure that it's advertised, and then we'll put it on the agenda
We'll get it on the right
after
schedule.
that's scheduled, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. White, in and out. Faster than the drive-through.
Especially today, everybody's in line for ice cream.
What?
Now we got him to say ice cream. He's like, what? Thank you. Okay, and the last item that I have is creating a Human Rights Advisory Committee. And it says Julia, but neither of you look like
Julia
Julia.
is not
so-
here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This resolution will establish a Human Rights Advisory Committee. The city believes that it wants to protect the health, comfort, and convenience of their citizens regardless of age, race, color, creed, religion, national origin, ancestry, disability, marital status, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or physical characteristic. The resolution creates a Human Rights Advisory Committee. It names the number of persons or the membership. There should be 13 members on the committee. 2 representatives from a racial or national minority, 2 representatives from the LGBTQ community, 2 members from local religious organizations, and the members shall serve 3-year terms. The committee shall meet at least 6 times per year. At the first meeting, the chair, vice chair will be nominated and elected. Section 2 on line 42 explains the purpose of the committee. The definitions are laid out in section 3, line 53. Line 80, section 4, there shall be a city council liaison. Line 85, section 5, there shall be a city staff liaison. And if the council approves this committee, we would bring this to legislative session and set out to identify the members.
The only thing that I didn't see in here that we discussed was a youth member, at least one youth member. That may not always be possible, so I don't know how we want to phrase that, maybe an encouragement to have it, but I'd certainly like to make the point for future appointments that we want to have the youth involved.
What about, and maybe if you do want one, what about reaching out to doesn't the Board of Education have one youth that represents them during the school year? So maybe it's something including that student that.
That was creepy. Or even having the Board of Ed giving the seat to a young person to be nominated by or recommended by the Board of Education, you know, so that it gives them, you know, the opportunity to, I don't know, Laura, you had a.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about it as I'm going along. I'm like, I don't know that they really need to be involved in that, because someone might want to be involved in this committee, but not want to have to go through school staff to identify and say, I want to be on this committee. I think that it should be like most of our others, where they would just apply to the mayor's office and be appointed.
The only other
I just thought that was an avenue, because typically the kids that are really involved in groups like this are ones that are involved in the Student Government Association, for the most part.
But I think we reach out to them
Yeah.
when we're looking for filling these positions. We reach out in all directions to a lot of people, but to say that they have to recommend, I don't know if that's really necessary.
I'm not saying they have to, they may. I mean,
Yeah.
unless somebody applies to the mayor's office and balance them, I mean, there's.
Yeah.
May I make a recommendation?
Sure, please.
There's nothing in there to stagger terms. We don't want
Yes, I saw that too.
changeover.
Yeah, it only has the 3-year term in there, but no staggering for the establishment. I don't know if that needs to be in there from the beginning, or if you would just do this as you appoint them, stagger the terms.
We did something in bicycle pedestrian and youth development
Just take the
that,
same language.
yeah, we just
Yeah, we can
copied
add
the
it.
same thing
Yeah.
to make sure that it's staggered. I forget how we did it.
Mr. Heath, this is Councilman Ireton. I'm looking at line number 26 and 27, and it says membership may include independent persons of high moral character and investment or interest in the field of human rights. Now, depending on what part of town you're in, I could be a person of high moral character, or I could be in the unnamed alley, after Market Street in 1992. So my question is I'm not sure whether or not I have or anyone in the room has except Mr. White from the church, who was just here a second ago, to determine who an independent person of high moral character is. So
Who sets that
I
standard?
would say membership may include persons with an interest in the field of human rights. I'm not sure, I don't know where Ms. Glanz got that. She may have gotten it from the other one. I just think that's a slippery slope to ask us to make a determination about people that isn't, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I don't feel like it's my job.
Because then we're being discriminatory.
Yeah, and who decides whose character?
Yeah, that's being
I mean, who's
discriminatory.
at what level?
So if I
agree.
I would make just a suggestion to change that to membership may include persons with an interest in the field of human rights.
Is that sentence even necessary?
Yeah, it might not be. I mean, we just assume that they do.
And it says it may include, so I mean, I don't know that it really is
Yeah. Membership
necessary at
includes
all.
persons with an interest in the field of human rights.
I think the thing, if I could just sort of maybe guess at what the intent is, there are people in the community that are very well respected that I bet you each of us could mention 5, and I don't think that we'd have much of a controversy over it. I think the intent probably, and maybe I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, if I am, please tell me, that you want somebody of significant stature in the community to be on this. Not that the others wouldn't have significant, but I'm saying, just somebody who everybody goes, yep, if he's on it,
It's legit.
or she's on it, it's gonna work.
But I think that we do that with the mayor's nomination and our confirmation of the members, and I don't know that it needs to be spelled out in here.
If I may.
Now, that's my point. I
Yeah.
just think that we'll take care of that in the process, but I think that that's the kind of folks we want to look for.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Heath.
Yeah, Madam President, if I may, I think that's exactly what we want, but we get there through the process. We don't need to say it. Because this makes an implication that there are people that we appoint to these committees that are not
Not.
independent and of
Right.
high moral character and
Because I don't think
investment.
it's in any of our others.
And we try not to do that, right? So yeah, maybe we strike the,
Yeah, because that's
That
being
sentence.
discriminatory.
yeah, that sentence.
The whole thing?
Maybe that whole sentence.
That whole sentence,
That's an easy way of fixing it, yes.
yeah.
Don't say it.
Just count on the people
You're
that are
saying
doing
that
it to
you
do it.
love the organization, but you're doing just what you don't want the organization to do.
So we're adding youth membership and striking the sentence about character. Okay. Any other?
Could we, I wasn't not sure where people, I know that if someone feels that they have been, their human rights have been violated, that they have that they should come here with the absence of a human rights commission for the county. I remember we talked a little bit about that.
Right.
Where do you go?
I think the intent was to send this legislation to council, stand up this committee, and that they would develop the answer to
Figure
that.
that out.
All right.
I know that there's some lag time created by that, but the intent was this committee, like the youth development or, bicycle pedestrian or whoever, whichever advisory committee, is developing that answer, and then we'll send it to all of us for us to, because I think one of the outcomes that you talked about originally was that commission that can do, independent investigations and I think the way we get there is by standing up the advisory committee that says, okay, here's who should be on that, here's what the rules should be, here's what state laws might need to change, here's what local laws might need to change to get there, or here's how we operate within state law if we're satisfied with.
Yeah. The other one out of that, and Jack, Mr. Heath, I'm going back to I'm going to 27 and 29 again. Members must reside in the city of Salisbury. That was changed for some of the bicycle things because you had a huge interest in bicycles, but you didn't live inside the city limits. We let you be on.
We never actually changed it.
You didn't change it?
No.
That's got to be in the handbook.
We never actually changed it,
But I don't know whether or not if Wycomico County has 100,000 people and all the different religions, all the different languages that are spoken at the Board of Education, if Kinsey's right, 10,000 are gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, I don't know whether or not we can geographically say that we
Where
could
they're
only
from.
pull from
Salisbury.
Salisbury, especially with the absence of a larger commission countywide.
And because,
And the fact that this law, if we do create a law, would affect people who work in the city of
Work
Salisbury.
by-
So you might want to say reside and/or are employed in the city. I mean,
Right.
Well, but
Oh,
you
it
may
also
have,
includes people who shop in the city,
you
so
may
I don't
have
think.
other people who are interested in that, and I don't know, I mean, Reverend John Wright, I don't.
He doesn't live inside the
He doesn't
city.
live in the city, his church isn't in the city, but he comes here and he prays and he comes to a lot of stuff in the city. So he's invested in the community, it's more of a.
And this, you know, the city and the rules that we create and the laws that we establish and vote on, and, I mean, they affect a lot of people, and they have an interest, people have an interest in those things from beyond the city boundaries. I think what we've done in the past is just done it anyway.
Yeah. I think that it makes sense for
That's the
some
theme of
boards,
the
if
night.
it's a
All
housing,
just break it, is that the?
if it's a housing board or an issue, a BZA or something that deals with life inside the city, actually living in the city, things like that, it makes more sense. But for
Yes.
bicycles and for human rights advisory committees and things like that, this is, as we talked about, would include employment issues, as we mentioned, but shopping issues, in stores and housing issues and all kinds of things. So maybe they don't live in the city because they got discriminated by somebody they were trying to rent from in the city. Then where do they go? If we don't allow, people from the county to be involved in that, I think we lose a perspective.
Did the youth advisory committee wasn't only in the city, correct? That wasn't possible. There was 815 members of that. committee.
There were
Possibly all
815
live.
members.
They weren't all in, were they?
No.
We didn't even make an effort to check, so.
Right.
Yeah, I would say we should strike that sentence as well. But we may want to make sure that there is some representation. You may want to say at least 2 members will be city residents, or half, or,
Sure. I think if you leave it open, I mean, it's entirely up to you, but if you leave it open, I'll make sure that I send names some from the city.
I mean, do we want to assure that that happens in the future, though, by having something in there, or do we just want to go with what's what there?
Well, we always have, as a council, we get the recommendations and vote on them.
Right.
So we can, we have a say in it in that respect.
As long as we're on council, but what happens with future councils?
Oh, the
Well,
future council
all
will have to deal with it.
Right. But I'm just saying, do we want to, in establishing this, make sure that we always have city representation or not? That was just the question.
Well, we know there'll always
Well,
be a
you know
city
there'll be
council
city-
member assigned to it,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's one. I guess the other 12.
Well, it's a liaison, so it's non-voting.
It's only a liaison?
It doesn't really matter to me. I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't really matter whether we have someone from the city, as long as we're
I'm just
encompassing
posing the question.
city and county.
I'm all right with there being no,
Because I'm quite sure it'll be somebody from
Designation.
Salisbury,
Okay.
from the city here.
So we just strike that sentence and we're good. Any other comments, concerns,
Yeah,
considerations?
I just would like to say that, I wanted to thank Mr. Ireton for bringing it up in a timely fashion. And in conjunction with that, the mayor's office for their reaction time to get this thing put together in such a short period of time. It just shows what can happen when people do sit down and talk and work together.
Absolutely. I would agree 100%. So with those couple of changes, we have consent to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay. We batted 1,000 tonight. Which is great. Any other comments or concerns anybody want to
Yep.
ask for tonight? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Heath, for joining us.
Thank you.
Safe
Bye-bye.
travels. Bye-bye. You have Save it just hanging up. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Hey.
You will go ahead and this completed, Kim? Go on to this.
as soon as it's redone.